Recording in progress.
Ready to? Okay, very good. I gavel to order this special meeting of the Public Safety Committee. Roll call, please. Here.
Here.
We have just a couple of, thank you. We have just a couple of items on the agenda. Is everybody had a chance to look at it, and when we make any changes, redactions? Seeing none, the agenda will stand as submitted. Our first item on that agenda is the city administrator's report.
City Administrator's report is the Central Core Fire Training Center Commission discussion.
Got it. So I'll move right to number 4 under old business. And item A is the Central Core Fire Training Center Commission.
Good evening.
And so, right, so you had made this presentation to us at the regular committee meeting.
Correct.
We raised a number of questions. And so when do you want to start out by answering those questions, or how do you want to start?
So the questions that were posed, we submitted for responses, and we received several responses from the property management firm. Those are attached in board docs. And we also requested a copy of the lease agreement, which we received on Friday afternoon. And that as well has been attached to board docs. The lease agreement is in draft form, and it is going to legal review by the, for the cities of Brentwood, Clayton, and Richmond Heights, as well as the property owner is also reviewing this document. So that is where we stand right now, with legal review going back and forth to formulate a final document, and which will be ready for the April 17th meeting if it's approved for then.
So with that in mind, has everybody had a chance to review some of the responses? Does the board have any questions? I have a couple, if you don't mind.
Yes.
We asked the question was posed, what happens if the property owner's heirs decide not to renew the lease option after we construct the training facility? And the answer was, the lease will provide for options to renew that can only be triggered by the tenant. The owner will not have the right to not agree. There's a double negative in there, and I couldn't understand if I was missing that as a double negative, or it just meant that the only options within the full 50 years reside with the tenant?
That is my understanding, absolutely, yes.
Okay. So there's no reason whereby the owner of the property could cancel this lease during the period of time, because there's not any money changing hands.
Correct.
I mean, is one of the requirements that we keep current with regard to taxes and things like that?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. That was sort of my question. I was kind of thrown by the double negative, and I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying. Do you want to open it for discussion? Sure, go ahead.
So there, excuse me, there's no base rent, is zero.
Correct.
But the only expense of the lease itself is the taxes that will be passed on to that commission.
Correct.
And then there's a $250 a month management fee.
Correct.
So that's it.
Correct. Currently, that property is assessed as agriculture. I would assume it would maintain that assessment once I don't know if it would be changed to industrial. I don't know the answer to that, but it is currently agriculture.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Well, but I guess probably got the same question. I mean, if it's agriculture, you can't build on it without it getting rezoned by Shrewsbury.
Well, St. Louis County would, their assessor's office, for sure.
So there is a possibility, and if you've looked at your taxes lately, you'll notice that your assessed value has gone up. So, and typically, whether you put an improvement on it or not, sometimes the way they do their calculation, that cost is going to go up. So we will not always pay that $15,000 every year. And even if we go through the process in Shrewsbury, and the parcel is rezoned, it would still be if it's rezoned for industrial, it still fits the use that we intend. So I don't see that having any correlation to whether the assessed value will go up or not.
Well, it will go up. I don't know the rates, but I got to believe that it's a higher rate taxed as industrial or whatever we would be at after the improvement or the rezoning than it's taxed as
Yeah.
land.
Yeah, sure. That
So there
happens.
would be an increase eventually
Right.
in our tax.
It will be.
The body that can rezone?
It would be the city of Shrewsbury. They're planning.
Well, the St. Louis County Assessor's Office,
They're in charge of zoning?
No, not for
They're-
the city of Shrewsbury.
not in charge for zoning, they're charged for assessing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
understand that. I'm not asking, I mean, I was asking this, Steve kind of asked a couple of questions there, and I was interested in both, but I don't know that we got an answer to the
No,
question of who is
well-
in charge of the zoning.
So who's in charge of the zoning? City of Shrewsbury.
Okay.
Will we have to rezone it from agriculture to industrial? We did not ask that question. And we can get that answer and email that to you. So, I don't know.
I mean, the question is obviously whether or not within
any idea?
permitted uses for
We,
agriculture.
we have
is
Whitney
building
in the room, our planning development director. Or do you have an answer? Jason?
So, my apologies. Let me introduce, this is Jason Hildebrandt. He's our battalion chief of training. So he's been doing a lot of work in the background, so he may have insight I don't.
So with the planning and zoning, even if it is currently agricultural or industrial, and if that doesn't fit exactly what our use is, we can still apply to the city of Shrewsbury for a special use permit. And that if that's granted, then the property doesn't have to be rezoned.
Okay.
So even if it is agricultural and we can stick with that, then we may be able to get a special use permit under that current zoning.
Whitney, do you have any idea where, with the kind of use that we intend, would that be typically rezoned in Brentwood?
It would depend on the zoning, but generally agriculture is just vacant land. So yes, I would have proposed a rezoning or for use.
Are the parcels near it and around it also agriculture, or are they,
I haven't looked at this process, yeah.
Sure.
Do you,
how would you know?
yes, I can look at it.
We can take a look real quick if you
Yeah.
want.
Oh. Well, because it's a government entity, I don't know if taxes would apply in this instance.
It would, because we would not own it, we are leasing it, so we would still have to pay the taxes on it. But there is a strong possibility that if it's rezoned and then a structure is put on it, which is now an improvement, the assessed value will go up. You know, so there's land and then there's infrastructure on it. So it will go up. And to address the cost of that going up, that's why Chief Cottrell talked about other municipalities that would join the commission to use the facility so that we would derive revenue to pay for maintenance, ongoing maintenance, and related costs such as that. So we have thought and factored all of that in.
And you had said, what is it? You'd said at our previous meeting that you thought the lease arrangement with the other two communities, that, let's say that this is moved to the full Board of Aldermen, and the full Board of Aldermen says, yeah, let's go ahead and let's enter into this lease agreement with two other communities, costing us approximately $6,000, or that's the estimate at least. Question was asked at the last meeting whether or not, if the building isn't built for whatever reason, Shrewsbury says, I'm sorry, but we're not letting you build this there, or whatever, you still thought you would have some utility for that property?
So a couple of points to that question. In the proposed documents, I apologize, I didn't see it in the documents. In conversation with the property management, they wish to put a maximum number of years, a clause in there, if we do not obtain a permit, if we do not obtain approval to construct this, that it terminates the lease.
Okay.
And
Do you know how many years that is?
They requested a maximum of 3. So we felt confident in that year, or that time frame, that we can move through the process to know we have a thumbs up to proceed.
Okay, so Whitney, as you're looking that up, I don't want to, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Are there other questions? Does anybody want to wait for response? Or, I mean, so they're asking for action by this committee to recommend to the full Board of Aldermen that the city of Brentwood enter into a lease with the city of Clayton and the city of Richmond Heights to rent, lease.
So the resolution would be to Brentwood form a commission with the cities of Richmond Heights and Clayton, and that commission would enter into the lease agreement.
With the central, and so I do have a question about this, and forgive me if this sounds conspiratorial, but the Central Core Fire Training Center Commission, or is this a step towards the efforts to a fire district?
No, it is not. This is efforts to train together, to standardize our operations.
Okay.
That is our intent.
We have not had a discussion about that since, the days of Better Together.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so this has nothing to do with that, as far as I know.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Ronnie, help me get my head around, I'm trying to compare apples to apples. So if we were to do nothing and you continue trying to train, I'm looking at just over $10,000 a year, the cost of training elsewhere. If we do this, the annual cost is, I've heard $6,000, but yet it's quoted in here as operational cost of $40,000 annually. Plus, let's just say $15,000 in property tax, plus $250 times whatever that is, times 12. Those are just some of the costs that divided by 3 as it stands right now, correct?
So I touched on this at the previous meeting. We have other sources of revenue, other cities that are already training with us to help offset those costs.
Well, I understand that. You're getting a little bit ahead of me. I'm just trying to figure out, trying to compare the cost of the two. Now, I understand if, you're just going somewhere else to train, that's just a hard cost.
The cost is significant because we now have to build a structure on it.
Well, I'm not even talking about the infrastructure yet. I'm just talking about our annual, what's going to be in the budget annually to cover this
Right.
as compared to just training elsewhere.
Once the structure's built.
Yeah, that's going to be a one-time cost of our share of
Right.
what we think is $500,000. I understand that, and that's your,
Right, so there is a cost that's in your budget to participate in the core training right now.
Correct.
What is that number?
Around 58,000 is what we anticipate this year into that training group.
oh, that much.
Yes.
And is that broken down? in
It's
your
broken
bud-
down per authorized position that each agency has in their budget. So we pay for 23 firefighters to participate in training.
So is that the only thing that gets, is it the cost per officer times 23 that gets you to 58?
Correct.
So I just double checked with the Shrewsbury zoning map, The property is actually zoned M1, which is industrial.
Oh,
So there
Okay.
wouldn't be a zoning change, yeah.
and is it in an area that the larger
Yeah.
area is all industrial as well?
Yes,
Yes.
similar use.
By the NST.
Thanks for
I
looking
can-
that up. Thank you for looking that up. No, I believe you. No. I just didn't know, I just want to know the zoning classification of the area, of the properties around it.
Yeah, it looks to be M1, unless I have the map wrong, but it's on their
You're on
website,
it.
so.
There are at least a total of 3 lots around it of similar type use.
So you had said that the owner that owns that property has owned it since 2019, 2018,
Do we-
17?
2016, we believe.
So I wish I knew, I should know the answer to this, but I don't. We have a lease, and that's a 50-year lease, and she sells the property. I know she says she has no intention of selling the property as of today, but times change, things change.
Correct.
Sells the property, what obligation does that subsequent owner have to honor that lease? I honestly don't know the answer
That's
to
a
that
legal
question.
question.
I knew. Maybe I should find a lawyer to ask. I don't know the answer to that question, but maybe that's another question that can
Correct.
be, maybe that's another question that can be asked.
Yes.
You know,
So even though they say in the lease agreement that during the ownership, the tenant shall give notice to landlord if we want to terminate the agreement. Tenant shall have no further right to renew or extend the term after the expiration or termination of the last extended term. So I would imagine, of course, I'm not an attorney, that this sets precedent over them selling the property because the new owner would have to have signed the existing agreement in place.
okay, that's an answer. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? No. So the action that's being requested is that this committee approve for Brentwood to enter into an intergovernmental agreement forming the Central Core Fire Training Center Commission, correct? Is that are you asking this committee to approve that, or is it this going to the full board?
It's going to the full board.
Okay, so recommend to the full board approval, I guess, is what we would be doing, technically. I just want to make sure I wasn't saying more than I should. Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Chairman, you might be able to help me out with this. We kind of talked about liability. Yeah, and I know in the lease here, it says they're requiring a liability policy of no less than $2 million. But in your experience, if someone is injured, well, let's say in training, a firefighter is injured, does that then go, that's worker comp to whoever the employer of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's how it works.
And does, in your experience, does anybody beyond the workers' comp claim go after for liability?
So in the state of Missouri, I'll give you the quicker speech. In the state of Missouri, there is a line of cases that say that the limit of the liability of the employee is, or the limit of the liability of the employer, Brentwood, to the employee would be workers' compensation benefits. The only exception to that is if the city, the employer, acts in such a way that is so far beyond not providing a safe workplace. There's a concept called something more. You have to show that the employer acted in a willful, beyond negligence. If it's just negligence, you don't get anything for that. It's got to be even beyond reckless behavior. It's got to be behavior that's intended to harm. So you send something, in this example, the chief or somebody's chief would send a firefighter into a room knowing that they're going to be injured in some way. With that expectation that they're going to be injured, that might incur additional liability on the city for that employee's injuries. The thing I worry about is business invitees, people that aren't employees of the city who are invited to be on premises. I can't imagine who those people are, except I guess we're going to have instructors at times and things like that.
Sure.
And then also I worry about trespass too. I mean, you owe them the lowest standard of care, to a trespasser, but you do owe them a standard of care. So if it's an attractive nuisance,
I mean, we
And,
run that risk with any city
we do,
facility
we
as it
do.
is. And then there's a sovereign immunity limit
but
of
how
3
many
million.
places do we have that can light on
If-
fire?
Well, it could happen anywhere.
No, I'm just saying,
I mean, we took a visit to what?
Correct.
Two
Correct.
facilities.
Yeah, and
And they knew we were there, and if something had happened to
Yeah,
us, it would
but
be
that's
on
because they
our.
were 1,000 yards from the facilities. This is 3 miles from the facility. Nobody's going to be keeping an eye on this in the way that Fenton and West County keeps an eye on their training facility. They're in the same parking lot. We wouldn't be. We'd have to hire somebody or do something. I mean, there'd have to be
Yeah,
some.
you want to go ahead?
well, my counter to that is,
Okay.
that's part of why we don't have a training facility in this part of St. Louis County, because property is so expensive. The stations are built in residential areas, they're built in commercial areas in downtown Clayton, where we can't house a facility like this. So that's been a hurdle forever in St. Louis County. So that's why we pursued this avenue, and it was really, the doors just kept opening for us.
Question.
Yeah.
Where does Clayton and Richmond Heights stand on this process?
They're awaiting Brentwood's action. So they will take it to the board, or to their councils, once Brentwood takes action.
We're the only ones that have gone through committee.
Correct.
We are the only ones that have a committee.
So I will tell you, Chief, I have a ton of respect for you, and I'm saying this because I have so much respect for you. I'm inclined to vote yes for this, but I will tell you that I still have some concerns about this. I really do. And I'm going to share those with the board when we get a chance to talk on the full board. But I believe strongly that the full board should consider this. And I believe you are bringing this for very forthright reasons. And so I'm going to vote yes, but I want you to know up front how I feel about this. I'm not trying to lead anybody on here, so.
Thank you.
Closer than where they currently train.
Correct. Correct.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Number 5 on our agenda is citizen comments. Is there anybody, and there's nobody in the room, unless Whitney wants to talk some more, but I doubt she does. I really do. Something tells me she's like, no, thank you, but no. Is there anybody online that I can't
No one
imagine
online.
there is? Yeah. All right, seeing no other items on the agenda, I declare this special meeting adjourned.